St. Petersburg! We come! We come! In these troubled days, it pays whether you're Muslim or Christian. We come.
Now, when Faithless aren't on a tour bus, when we have to take a flight somewhere, we travel on ordinary airlines, the vast majority of us, including me, in the economy seats, and sometimes the whole band travels on an economy airline, the same as anyone else would. So you can understand our sense that there was something a bit different about this gig here in St. Petersburg when we got on board the plane booked for us by the promoters back in Heathrow. Have a look at the plane. Where were you? The usual clients?
Usually we carry sort of probably 70% of the time we take the Abu Dhabi royal family,
Right.
presidential flights.
Yeah. And indeed there is something different about this gig. It turns out that we've been booked to play at the opening of an annual event called the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, at which leaders of business from all over the world meet up with political leaders, including the President of Russia, of course, and Nicolas Sarkozy from France, and all sorts of other political leaders, in order to discuss the global economy, the role played by Russia, and the future. In fact, the whole forum has the umbrella title this year of laying the foundation for the future. But these leaders of big business and of government represent a class in society, represent an economic orthodoxy which has done its best to rob us of any hope of a decent future. All of them are committed to capitalism, a system which has led to a massive increase in the gap between the rich and the poor over the past 30 years, a system which drives nations to war against one another for resources, a system which wrecks the environment and seems completely unable to deal with the challenges posed by climate change. And I'm not the only one who feels this way. Kate, perhaps you could tell me about the action taken by some local artists.
We have lots of local artists, but 34 of them are trying to protest, to make protest against the forum. So they make penis on one of the bridges, just to show people that there is, there is a division of people who are against the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum.
Protest penis. But there are clues here in St. Petersburg as to how humanity might have a more hope-filled future. It was here, after all, that one of the most democratic ways of organising society was first attempted. Here, in 1905, print workers went on strike. Inspired by the democratic structures of the Paris Commune, they decided to form a council in the workplace to discuss the best way forward. Other workers followed, and democratically elected delegates from each of these councils, or Soviets, met to discuss the best way forward for the whole of society. Now, if the people who elected those delegates felt that their particular delegate wasn't acting in their best interest, then those delegates could be recalled immediately. It's a much more democratic system than the parliamentary democracy that we have in Britain or Russia now. Crucially, workers had taken control of their own workplaces. They no longer listened to the dictates of bosses motivated by the accumulation of private profit, but instead discussed with each other what might be the most useful thing to produce and how that production might be organised. Of course, it meant that they had enemies not only in the capitalist class, but also in the 400-year-old Tsarist regime itself, and their attempts in 1905 to topple the Tsar were defeated. But in October 1917, the workers, with political leadership from the Bolsheviks, were successful in overthrowing the Tsar and the capitalist classes. The Workers' Council spread across Russia and set about the task of transforming society. Russia withdrew from the First World War. The private ownership of land was abolished and use of the land was granted to the ordinary peasants who worked on it. The legal system was completely reformed. Courts were set up with elected judges. Women were given full voting rights and equal pay. And in 1920, Russia became the first country in the world to legalise abortion. Homosexuality was no longer a crime. Literacy programmes were rolled out. The number of schools increased by 50% in just 1 year. University fees were abolished. Libraries expanded and there was a blossoming in literature, art and cinema. But the revolution was attacked both by a vicious civil war and by attacks from outside, and crucially it failed to spread to other countries. The dream of socialism turned into the nightmare of Stalinism. Of course, Stalin claimed that the USSR was still socialist, but in reality it started to mirror many of the worst aspects of capitalism, but one presided over by a brutal bureaucratic state. The elected leader of the biggest workers' council in St. Petersburg at the time of the revolution, Leon Trotsky, had to flee the country. He sought refuge with his friends, the painters Diego Rivera and Frida Kahlo in Mexico, but Stalin's henchmen caught up with him. He was murdered with an ice pick to the head. So does the failure of that first major attempt to move the world towards socialism mean that we should completely give up on the endeavour? I don't think so. In fact, I don't think there's ever been a more urgent need for a different kind of a world in which people's working and leisure lives are determined not by what makes the most profit for the rich, but by what makes the most sense for all of us. The business and political leaders who attend economic forums will never deliver that world. On the contrary, they will be some of the most fierce opponents of it. We have to take the power back from them.